I'm going to turn it over to my teammate, Nick Land. Nick is our Esri's national mapping lead for Europe, and he's going to take over and introduce our expert panels. So over to Nick.
Many thanks, Ryan. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us today. It's my pleasure to take us through the next two sessions. And what we're planning to do is delve a bit deeper into the theme for this event, which is around building trusted information through good governance, technology, and people. We've very deliberately chosen that theme, and I think many of you will recognize the terminology that we're using. We're looking to build on the great momentum and work that has been done by UNGGIM, and of course, many of you have contributed to that, to develop the guidelines for an integrated geospatial information framework, IGIF. So what we're going to do with the presentations today is explore some of those different aspects of governance around the organizations and institutions that need to come together to build geospatial infrastructure, but also the legal and policy frameworks that need to be put in place, and importantly, of course, the finance. We'll also talk about technology, not only GIS and all the innovative and good stuff that's happening with GIS, but also the importance of the fundamental data that your organizations are creating, that authoritative underpinning framework for geospatial infrastructure, but also the related standards that are needed to be implemented. And last but not least, and probably most importantly, we will touch on the people issues. So the partnerships that need to be put in place, the capacity and education that's needed, and of course, the communication and engagement with the various stakeholders involved. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker. And before I do that, can I just remind you, please do type in your questions as we go. We will be monitoring those, and we'll pick up on those in the Q&A that will follow immediately after each presentation. So with that context, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce Lorraine. Lorraine is from Ordnance Survey Ireland, and she is the CIO and General Manager at Ordnance Survey Ireland. And today she's going to be talking about OS Ireland's experience in using geostatistical data, so combining both mapping and statistical data to help the Irish government in its response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So with that, Lorraine, I hope you're out there and you can start up your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Can you see my screen okay and hear me okay?
I can, that's perfect, Lorraine.
Okay, thank you. Well, hello everybody. As Nick has said, my name is Lorraine McNerney, and I'd firstly like to thank Jack and the team at Esri for the opportunity to speak at the NGEF forum today. It's a great pleasure. Again, as Nick has outlined, my presentation will cover how my own organisation, Ordnance Survey Ireland, which is the national mapping agency, has worked collaboratively with partners really at this time of national emergency to leverage our geostatistical data governance capabilities and also our state's geospatial data hub, which is GeoHive, to support the national response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So a little bit of background, first of all, was that in December 2018, the Government of Ireland published our first public service data strategy. And that really highlighted the need for a national spatial data infrastructure, or GeoHive, which could provide a ready-made and proven and using the latest Esri technology, a highly versatile platform for sharing geospatial and statistical data in Ireland. And at the same time, my own organisation, OSI, had published our 3-year strategy. And this had a really strong focus on data quality and governance, with a clear mission to provide trusted geospatial services through collaboration and partnerships. OSI has played really a leading role in a number of data-related working groups under the guidance of the Government Chief Information Officer in Ireland. And we're also actively engaged at UN GGIM in a number of expert groups, both on the integration of geography and statistics. And indeed, OSI used the UN IGIF, for the Integrated Geospatial Information Framework's 9 principles, as the basis for developing this current 3-year strategy. So again, over recent years, we've made significant investment in creating GeoHive as the national geospatial data infrastructure for Ireland, using Esri as our technical partner. And we've also implemented strong data governance using the data management framework DAMA. So this meant when the threat of the global pandemic began to emerge, that we really had the technology platform, the partnerships and the processes already in place to support the Irish government's response to the national emergency. And in parallel with that, OSI had also a very strong working relationship with Ireland's Central Statistics Office, the CSO, and this was underpinned by an official annual Memorandum of Understanding, which we've been working together on for more than 2 years to build out the Irish Sustainable Development Goals, or SDG platform. And this is used for monitoring progress against the UN SDGs in Ireland. And as a result of this ongoing SDG initiative, our 2 organisations really had the proven experience of working collaboratively together and had the right people and processes in place, in particular around strong data governance. And in January this year, really no one could have foreseen how the COVID-19 emergency would spread across the globe, and no one could have anticipated the lockdown and other unprecedented measures that both the Irish and governments across the world would need to introduce urgently to save lives. And from the very outset of the crisis, the Taoiseach's office, or Ireland's Prime Minister, along with senior medical officers, our national health emergency teams, and also local authorities, all started asking the same questions, which were: how many cases are there, where are they, and critically, how can we help to address these? So we all needed the answer quickly, because these huge decisions needed to be taken around introducing lockdowns, closing businesses, preparing healthcare organisations and our health service for a surge in patients. So it was therefore clear really from the beginning that statistical and geospatial data has a critical role in our national COVID response in Ireland. And again, OSI was quickly able to respond to this emerging health crisis, because we didn't need to create anything new. We were able to apply our people, process and technology, including our knowledge of the IGIF and the DAMA framework, underpinned by our own national public service data strategy and some of the working groups that we had in place. So when COVID began to emerge as a very real threat to life in Ireland, this SDG, or Sustainable Development Goals group, was quickly extended with the support of the government CSO, the government CIO, I should say, to build new capabilities and reuse GeoHive to address the challenges of the pandemic. So at the same time, we expanded the SDG group to include the All Ireland Research Observatory, which is based at Maynooth University, to help us with data handling and advanced spatial analysis. We brought on board the Department of Housing, Planning and Local Government, which had were a key player in the local authority space. And we obviously already had a very strong relationship in place with Esri Ireland. So this group set up a purpose and a vision. We set up a terms of reference, and really that vision was key to reusing data and reusing tools to inform Ireland's operational intelligence and situational awareness efforts in response to the COVID-19 outbreak. As I've said, the terms of reference we had in place was a collaborative agreement between public and private sectors, and really was guided by the mantra of collect once and use many times. And we wanted to ensure that all data pertinent to the health crisis was shared and effectively accessed through GeoHive, so that different government departments could access this data quickly and reuse it for their own data and analytics purposes. So over the intervening 6-month period, our group has developed data, infrastructure and processes, including public, private and secure data hubs. We have created Geo-Statistical data governance subgroups and a technical architecture group. And we've also delivered a number of initiatives, which I'll briefly cover over the next few slides. The data ecosystem and data governance were, I suppose, essentially key to underpinning Ireland's national response. And that's with the Central Statistics Office taking multiple data sets into their own administrative data centre and providing it back out as anonymised statistical data for publication and analysis through the state's GeoHive platform. And we also took epidemiological data from our own national pandemic modelling team, which was also made available through data hubs, apps, reports, story maps and dashboards. So this data all used our national COVID tracker app information as well, and is also used by the national media on a daily basis in Ireland. So in terms of public dashboards, our COVID response group hit the ground running very quickly back in March, and I suppose driven by the enthusiasm of everyone involved, because we all understood the critical importance of what we were working on and trying to make a difference in Ireland's defence against COVID-19. So our group took data from various sources and started to analyse it. And we then moved this data into the GeoHive environment and built an interactive dashboard and some web apps. And really that was to provide a public dashboard so that the citizen could find out information when it was needed and in a timely manner. So this first GeoHive hub was launched on the 18th of March, a week before our government closed down all businesses, venues, public amenities, and 9 days before a full national lockdown. So it provided information and a visual overview of the information of confirmed cases, deaths, where they were happening in the country, and it was updated on a daily basis. And in less than 4 months, we received over 750,000 hits. We also then set about creating a secure data hub for our National Public Health Emergency Team and the Chief Medical Officer. And this the publicly accessible data hub was swiftly followed by this secure dashboard. It was a more expansive dashboard and provides over 100 of our key public health personnel with daily updates on a wide range of indicators. These include the capacity of our intensive care units around the country. It gives them daily insights into key information, and it's also the main platform used by the CMO and his team to inform themselves on the critical decisions that need to be taken. And over time then, the Department of Health in Ireland decided to release more and more data out to the general public in response to the growing need for publicly available data. So again, our GeoHive response coordination group developed a new public GeoHive site, giving users the option to explore the data in more detail, to download it as open data, and really to look at their own local amenities. So the hub shows cumulative numbers of cases of deaths on a geographic basis. And for example, it clearly shows where there are hotspots indicating clusters of cases occurring in specific towns, residential nursing homes and factories, etc. So consequently, it's easier for people to see and understand the risks in their own locality and make the best decisions to ensure the safety of themselves, their families and their employees. So this dashboard currently receives over 500,000 hits per day, which really demonstrates how valuable it is to the national response in Ireland. In terms of our local authority response, and throughout the lockdown, these local authorities in Ireland were responsible for engaging with voluntary organisations, for coordinating the community response, and particularly for vulnerable members of society in Ireland who are either shielding or self-isolating at home. Again, our response group stepped forward to support these local authorities, and GeoHive was used once again as the platform for recording data, such as how many calls a local authority was getting in, how many citizens were concerned about social isolation, or how to help delivering things such as meals or prescriptions directly to them in their home. This platform was updated daily, and the dashboard covered all local authorities in the country, really allowing government to monitor the level of support being delivered in communities around the country. And from the perspective of our Department of Taoiseach, which is the Prime Minister's office here in Ireland, when the Taoiseach's office started to plan for the reopening of the economy, the GeoHive group and our platform created a report and a dashboard which showed the location of all retail units, their type, their size, the number of employees, etc. And this delivered far more detailed information and intelligence than government officials had originally thought possible. And we did so within a really short period of time, just a couple of days. And the insight that we delivered then informed the government's economic considerations for reinstating this economic activity. And it helped to reassure the Taoiseach's office about the declining risks associated with opening and reopening business units at that time, which brought forward the work plan. We also worked with our National Transport Authority, and there are many examples of the data hubs and the dashboards and analysis that we were able to deliver. In this one particular project, we created a hub showing the average width of footpaths to help town planners in local authorities identify where social distancing measures needed to be applied, particularly in busy retail locations and areas. And we also worked in collaboration with our An Garda Síochána, which is the Irish Policing Service. We provided them with a dashboard and a set and a series of information products to monitor traffic mobility during lockdown. And we provided all of this as linked open data where appropriate, in particular as 5-star linked open data. Again, we're getting significant number of hits to this platform, and it allows developers to take the data and then embed it and create their own apps and push them out then to the public as new and varied services. So really, when we look back in the months to come, there will be doubtless lessons learned, and I suppose from our own country experience, we'll look back on this period. However, we can already appreciate that the role geospatial data and the apps and the platforms have played a key part in keeping people informed about this really fast-changing situation, revealing patterns, giving people information they need to make the confident and difficult decisions within their own lives, communities and businesses. And in many respects, this health crisis has validated the investment we've made in GeoHive as a state, and providing our government and our partners with authoritative, standardised data, both to the public sector, private sector and the citizens, really in order to meet the country needs. Some of the next steps that we've planned include to provide the Irish government and key decision makers with the information they need to navigate our country's national response to the pandemic, and providing additional data and geostatistical visualizations. We're also going to continue to provide that strong data governance role, and in particular to push out further open data services. Looking ahead, Ireland now has a proven platform, well-established data governance processes and strong working relationships in support of the national response to COVID-19. So in summary, really, whatever the challenges that Ireland and again, all of you across the world and your governments face, we're really strong in saying that our geostatistical community here in Ireland was ready to respond when it mattered most. We're going to continue supporting our national journey in the fight against COVID-19. And really, I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity in sharing our story with you today, and happy to take any questions. Back to you, Randall.
That's great, Lorraine. Many thanks. Ran, if we can bring up the title slide again, that'd be great. That was Thanks, excellent, Nick. Lorraine. Thank you. If you would like to join me at the virtual table, we've got time for a few questions from the audience. So I'm just looking here. So we have a question, Lorraine, are there plans to track long-term health impacts and need for investment?
Yes, interesting question. That what we've now stood up is a joint team across our public health services. There are now 11 agencies involved in what we would have stood up as the Data Governance Board. And in particular, it's to bring in expertise to track the more long-term cases to look. In particular, what we want to do is, now that we've had the opportunity to look at the data governance piece within our health service, it's to build on that. So yes, we certainly plan to look at the profile of COVID in Ireland, the long-term impacts of it, and also then to look back. But also what we've learned as well is this view in terms of data management. We've put a lot of effort into standardising and getting our data into a better shape than it would have been at the start of this. And the plan would be to put a more long-term process in place for that as well.
Great, thanks, Lorraine. Lorraine, partnerships clearly very, very important in what you've done in Ireland, and it was interesting to see the collaboration, not just within government, but also the academic sector and also the private sector. Could you expand a bit more on really how you've built those collaborative partnerships?
Sure, yeah. As I would have made reference to at the start of this, we started probably around 3 years ago, really taking the IGIF and the UN SDGs as a method and a process for putting in place strong data governance, starting with the Geo-Statistical piece, but we've since expanded, as I've made reference to, into Maynooth University, into other public agencies. I have to say that the 9 principles from the IGIF we took at the start, we've had a 6-month review and made reference and checked back in those, and they've really stood the ground, and they've been the core elements of what we've delivered on. We've picked certain elements of them at points in time, but really if I was to make one comment on that, it's been that the IGIF has been a key framework for us to use in bringing on board new partners from academia, even from startups. We're also really proud that the National COVID Tracker app in Ireland has been taken on board and shared out across the world. I know even maybe many of you on here today, your COVID Tracker app was based on the Irish implementation of that. And again, coming back to the data governance, the data that we provide as open data services are what are pushed out in our national media, in the National COVID Tracker app. So I think this is a really, really solid example of taking the core principles of data management, of data governance, of really treating that data well, and we've used a lot of our fundamental data themes as part of the national response. So if I was to say, we've brought on board academia, public, private, but the framework from the IGIF has been what we started with and what we're continuing to use. So it's been a robust way of us, sharing what we do and how we operate and bringing others on board.
Yeah, very interesting. Good to hear. Thank you. There's a very specific question here around, is there a link to the Ireland Retail Business Data Report?
That was actually done for our Taoiseach's department, so it wasn't shared publicly at the time. It was a central government one. If there's a particular query, Nick, I'd be happy to pick up with the particular respondent afterwards to see if there's something I could share more openly with them. Okay,
very good. Thanks, Lorraine. Just a final question from me. I'm wondering, through this experience, has it in some way, would you say, changed or evolved the role of Ordnance Survey Ireland as a national mapping agency?
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose we were pushing hard and trying to ensure that geospatial and geostatistical information were being pushed, centrally as part of our own national data infrastructure. And again, the reference that I made to our public sector data strategy, that was really only published. It was published in December 2018, so really only live in 2019. But this COVID national response has pushed us right to the, we're in many of the top table meetings, we're providing data and information right into the decision makers at this point in time. So yes, absolutely, Nick, it's obviously hasn't been the ideal way of trying to do that, but certainly what we've tried to do is make the most of that and ensure where we can that we're pushing good geostatistical data quality, governance and platforms.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting, the leadership role you're taking, actually. More questions are coming in, Lorraine. We've just got a little bit of time, so let's see if we can take a few of these. Is there a link to OS Ireland's country level action plan, and how are you adapting or implementing IGIF?
Yes, that is on our website, but what I could do is pop it into the chat here, Nick, or if there's a particular question, or I'm happy to share my own contact details as well with any attendees here today if they'd like to follow up afterwards. But yes, it is on our own website, which is osi.ie.
Perfect, thanks. Yeah, Lorraine, maybe just drop that into the chat and with your email address if you're happy to do that.
Okay.
Here's a good one. Does Ireland experience COVID denial nonetheless? So you've taken a very evidence-based process to tackling COVID. Are you seeing a lot of COVID deniers?
We're seeing a few, all right. Yeah. The group I've mentioned that's stood up, which is led by our Department of Health, we've had a number of discussions around even, the level of detail that you provide. So I suppose our government took a very open and transparent, or as best of one they could at the time, transparent approach with the data and tried to push it out there. And I suppose the whole piece around GDPR, personally identifiable information, and that's where I think coming back to the strong collaboration and partnership we had in place with our statistical office meant that they were taking the lead on that. We only took data and information and published it out once that had been signed off, once there was not non-disclosure, and I think that's the strong element again then of having that joint government team that there were questions coming in all the time. Why aren't you making more data available? And there's not enough information. Why are you taking the decisions that you're taking? So what we've tried to do is make as much data available as we can, but obviously that approach, and again just I suppose a point to note around the Esri platform is that we were able to really quickly stand up public views of the data, but we were also able to stand up very quickly secure views that we could show to the key decision makers, look, this is what this data looks like. And actually that's been a key to pushing out more and more data openly. As they said, right, we're able to look at it and be comfortable and see the type of information and the way it'll be visualized, and then we just push it out into our public version of the hub. So again, the reuse of the Esri platform has meant that we can, we're not creating new websites or services, we're just actually republishing data into different views, applications, dashboards, or hub sites.
Excellent. And Lorraine, just one more question, if I may. Your presentation's obviously triggered a lot of questions and thoughts. This is a great question and a challenging one for you, I guess. What is the most compelling statement you could offer to CEOs and CIOs regarding adopting geospatial technology as a critical component of fighting COVID-19 pandemic?
Right, great question. Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. Rather, I actually wrote down myself. I wrote down a one-liner that Jack had in his opening piece, and that was, mapping and geography are providing the language for interconnecting with our help. So that's probably my key takeaway, is really it's trying to get mapping, geography and the platforms we have as a way of interconnecting, or a way of bridging the language or the the message that you're trying to do, trying to impart with your citizens, your business and your government. So yeah, sorry, I know that's a bit of a cheeky way to rob Jack's opening
use
line.
Once, yeah, collect once, use many times, Lorraine. Yeah, that's excellent. Well, look, thank you very much again, Lorraine. You can't hear our applause, but I will give you a round of applause. Thank you again for that. That was
Thanks again,
excellent.
Nick and Randall. Thank you.
Great.